Hi everyone. This is a video response to some of the questions I had in the lab regarding requirements documents. One of them is has to do with the Moscow model, the model where you have must have, should have, could have, and won't have. When writing, a lot of the students do not follow the Moscow. They either do not specifically specify what Moscow each requirement should be. Like it can be priority. In many cases, you might also follow the Moscow when you're writing. The application must open up a window, for example. The user must for example, the system must allow the user to select open all windows, so on and so forth. Be careful to follow a consistent form of writing. Do not, for example, one of the very common mistakes is just having very inconsistent writing as, okay. For example, the user can, as you can see, it at least what the user can do is very specific in this documentation. So they all follow the same format, although it might be slightly different. One of the important thing is one of the interesting questions I had was about the non-functional requirements part. As you can see in the examples, they actually have all the versions of different Microsoft Windows, Ubuntu, and is there a Mac or another operating system? No, there's at least Windows and Mac and Linux. So they put all these as separate requirements, but and then, as you've known in some of my examples, I've actually given the application shall run on Windows 10 and then version 18.0, 19.9, and 2004, so on and so forth. I merged them into one. One of the students was asking which one is correct one. In terms of actual real life, this is the preferred version, because it is easier for traceability, because different versions can be ticked off when they are fulfilled by the system. For example, if you run the application on Windows 10 version 18.09 and 19.09, and that's fine, but then it fails on 2004, then you can just say that only this one failed. But if you merge them, then there'll be three different versions, and then it might be seen as it failed on three versions. From traceability perspective, that's more desirable. However, in this module, I'm asking you to write a small set of non-functional requirements, not the whole system requirements. Then it would make more sense to actually merge them into one requirement, for example, for Windows different versions. The reason being, this might be understood as just repeated requirements by the marking demonstrators. Although they're different, they're not really incorrect, but I don't want you to just write four different versions of the same, like, oh, okay, the application shall run on I don't know, Edge, Firefox, then Chrome, and all the other browsers. I can list 15 different browsers, and I'll just be done with the non-functional requirement parts. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So that's why I told some of the students to actually merge them, so that make sure that you have key different 10 or 15 requirements. Of course, unless you have, for example, what was the limit? Is it 10 or 15 non-functional requirements? Then if you fulfill that, if you have, for example, 10 distinct non-functional requirements plus some of these types of requirements, that's fine. But if you just include 5 non-functional requirements where you just select the different versions of browsers or different versions of operating systems, and then put down 10, 15 non-functional requirements with just the platform of the platform non-functional requirement, then that would be incorrect. In a lot of, okay, here is the other interesting question that I've actually came across a few times. This wasn't actually a question, but we discussed it with the students. They asked, I told them about having provable functional requirements, not being vague. And one of them is, as you can see in the performance, especially things like the application should load in 5 seconds, but should load in 5 seconds, for example, in which operating system, like which phone, which system. So in order to do that, you can actually, in order to make sure that it is a specific system so that you can test and prove that later on, because you have to prove that your system fulfills the non-functional requirements. So what you can do is you can actually specify the system that the application will be tested on when you finish it. For example, all performance measure will be done on this type of machine. For example, the explanation on performance non-functional requirements here is that the testing will be performed on this machine. For example, you can say iPhone 15 if you're doing a mobile application, or Samsung 23 Plus or Ultra, whatever version with some details of it, and then on Android, and then say that, for example, if you have to look at the performance using another test file, for example, you can put specify the details of the test file that you're going to run. For example, I'm going to open up this application, this test file, for example. Within this application, it should run within, it should open within 5 seconds. For example, if you're using a web system, it might make sense to say that we're going to test it in FDM. So the test will be specifying test where the tests will be. The tests will be, for example, FDM, so that you can actually, once you specify those, then you can just say that the application should log in within, for example, certain amount of time. We should be able to do certain amount of time. So that you talk about the mobile application, for example, mobile phone plus maybe the operating system that it's going to use, plus the FDM internet connection, so on and so forth. And then you can say that the application shall log in within, for example, a certain amount of time with the specified test machine and the specific testing environment, for example, within the testing, so that is actually provable, because you can take the phone or the computer system that you're going to use. You can take it to, for example, bring one to the FDM lab or some other place. It can be Queen Mary as well, Queen Mary Internet. So then you can just say that the system C, you can take the laptop out, you can connect to the internet, and then you can, for example, launch the application and watch if it actually logs in less than 5 seconds. Of course, you will look at an average, but on an average, if you can prove that it logs in, for example, less than 5 seconds or opens up something in 20 seconds, then you can prove that your application actually fulfills that requirement. So these are some of the issues that we discussed in the lab. And one more thing, a very common issue in use cases. What students do is they take out the steps of, for example, a use case, and then they divide it into multiple use cases, and then they include, extend, or generalize from that. Again, if you want to include, for example, let's just say this use case include this. What happens is commonly there is some action that requires some form. For example, let's just say a ticket system, ticketing system. They have the ticket where they would have so approve and let's just say reject claim, reject ticket, approve ticket, so on and so forth. Let's just say for the ticketing system. Not extend, we're going to do commonly. Okay, let's put an extend on this for now. So what happens here is they tend to do something like this, like for example, create ticket, let's just say, or edit tickets. They commonly say, why, I don't know. But let's just say create ticket. Then when you create a ticket, for example, they just say either a different type of ticket. One common problem is, for example, if they're going to have an EC, they just say an EC, and then thinking that this is a class diagram, they just generalize different type of ticket. EC is a different type of ticket. It's not. First of all, maybe the better first important thing is just say create an EC, for example, rather than creating a ticket, or instead of generalization, they use inclusion as accepting or denying a ticket. For example, there will be a common mistake to, for example, edit user detail, and then that includes, they do two things like include change password again. So either maybe include, another include, for example, change password and change, let's just say user, change details, let's just say. This is, again, it does not make sense. Or, for example, they go the other way around. Let's just have an actor, for example. That's a very common thing that I've seen in different diagrams, where they just say that, oh, okay, I change password. Or is there a no, I don't think you can actually reverse the. Okay, it doesn't happen in here. Either this way or some others actually go this way. Some others go actually this way, which is again wrong. This doesn't make sense in one sense. First of all, editing user details might not necessarily be something. Maybe changing password, usually things like changing password, changing user details are usually the use cases. Not this is not a good use case in the saying, because the details would include this and that. So if it changing editing user details might include this, they usually not include. They might actually extend. They might use extend. So while they are changing password or changing user details, let's just delete this for now. This extends that. So what it is when you're editing user details, you might be changing a user password, which doesn't make sense, because either you change your password as a different thing in most systems. You log in, you change your password. But having it or edit or change your details, you log in, you go to your system, you click change my details, or click some sort of profile, and then it takes you to your details, you update your details, you press apply. One thing that is very common is getting things like parts of the creating or editing something as a use case. For example, creating tickets might require you to press approve. Approving is not might not be a use case, because approving in that sense is just creating, like clicking a button in most cases. If you look at the ticket, you delete, you edit, or you do something like editing the ticket. Once you create, you might edit a given ticket, which is a separate use case that the user might do. So be careful about taking out parts of like steps of a use case and then make it another use case, because you do that in conditions where you want to actually associate the user with the existing use case. Because if you're not going to do this in many cases, unless, I mean, in certain cases, extend might not make sense by itself. For many extends, maybe you wouldn't, but especially includes. In many cases, you are expected to have, for example, this also, if there's an include, it might not be correct in here, but I'm just using it as an example. So the system should be using both of these, like our search and loan example last semester. So be careful. Do not use include and extend too much. You have the tendency to think that if there's not too many includes and extends, it will be incorrect, but that's not the case. Again, please refrain from using a lot of unnecessary include and extends, and make the use case diagram basic, but includes all the user goals and all functionality. Include capture all the user functionality, all the user's goals with the system. I hope you find this video useful. I'll see you next week in the lab.